And we're live. Hey everyone, my name is Meera. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about City of Stolen Magic, the July book of the month, and who better to speak with than the author herself. So give a warm welcome to Nazneen Ahmed Pathak. Hi Nazneen, how are you doing? Thank you so
Hi,
much for joining us.
thank you so much, Mira. Thank you so much for having me, and hi, everyone.
Congratulations on the book release. It's been a month. How has the whole experience been for you so far?
It's been really surreal. I've been writing this book for 10 years, so it's been a long journey to this point. And it's been selected as Children's Book of the Month in the UK by the biggest bookseller, and it's had so much love, and it's been incredible just to see it out in the world. It's my third baby, I feel, in many ways, and so to have it out there and to have everyone reading it and excited about it is just an absolute dream come true. And I still don't think I am fully kind of awake yet from it. It's just, I just still feel like I'm in a dream.
I've seen all the book signing photos and that made me a little jealous, honestly. I wish we could be a part of those events too.
Well, I hope that I will come to India soon. I have
Oh, yeah.
family in India. We come regularly. So hopefully there might be something happening there
Oh,
later on in the year.
that would be amazing. So before we get started with the discussion itself, why don't you share a little bit about what this book's about, just for people who haven't gotten to reading it yet?
Yeah, sure. So, City of Stone and Magic is a historical fantasy. It's set in Bengal in 1855, and it follows the adventures of Chompa, who is my main character. She's 11 years old, and she and her mother live in a village in Bengal, and they are both witches. So they both have magic, but Chompa has a very different kind of magic to her mother. So her Chompa has been born with magic. She has a very powerful type of magic, and she's a very bold and impulsive, active character. So she's very proud of the really powerful magic she has. She can point at anything and just change it, but she's not allowed to use her magic. Her mother has forbidden her from using it. She says that it's too dangerous, that she's not able to control it, and so instead, Chompa is being told that she has to learn Ummi's magic, and Ummi's magic is a slow type of magic. It's about writing. It requires learning in special language, and Chompa's not about any of that. She just wants to use her magic and show off, really. So what she decides to do is she decides to take matters into her own hands. She decides if she does her magic, she can prove to Ummi that she can control it, then she can just do her magic. She doesn't have to learn the boring, slow magic. And unfortunately, it's disastrous. And as a result of what happens, Chompa's mother, Ummi, is kidnapped. She is abducted by a group of pale men. Chompa's never seen anyone look like them before, and she doesn't know why she's been taken. She doesn't know where she's taken. She just knows that she's got to get her back. So she follows the men. She goes to Dhaka. She discovers that the men are taking magical people to London and selling them for their magical powers. And she realizes she has to get to London. So she ends up traveling on a jinn powered ship. So it's got a tree growing out of it, and the jinn is living in the tree. She travels on that ship. She goes to London. She makes some friends. She discovers that she's got to not just save her Ummi, she's got to save all the magical people and take on this evil colonial company as a result. And that's her mission. And that's City of Stolen Magic.
Fantastic. And to say that I can't wait for more people to read it, because I was so excited hearing about it. And even as I was reading it, I'm like, oh my God, everyone's going to love this, because it's just like the perfect combination of adventure and fantasy and, self discovery, as well as you explore different parts of who you are, like your culture and language, and just come to terms with, um, life as it is. So I am so excited for everyone to read it and watch this video and get more excited about it. Uh, So when I first heard of City of Stolen Magic, what really caught my attention is the blend of history and magic, right? Um, I want to talk about both of these elements because they made my reading experience so much more immersive, and I felt like it was the perfect balance that I could ask for.
Mhm.
Uh, Something that's great about historical fiction in itself is that it reminds us of a time that was and how the people lived then, and how that has shaped the way we interact with various aspects of life, whether that's culture or education, how social norms pan out. A lot of the story in City of Stolen Magic itself, it leans heavily on these historical events that happened in India. So as a historian yourself, how did you decide that you wanted this book to be set in 1855, and what specific aspects of Indian history you wanted to weave into the story? So what
Mhm.
did that creative process look like for you?
Okay. Um, so that's a really, really interesting question, Mira. So yes, I did. I am a historian. I've done worked on historical projects before, and it was really I went off maternity leave. I went on to maternity leave from a project that I was working on, which was all about um, the 19th century and the connections between. Well, it was looking at East London in the UK. It was looking at an area which is very connected to the docks, and but it's also very connected to the Bangladeshi community. And
Okay.
what I hadn't realised when I was researching that area, which is an area I know really well, being Bangladeshi myself, was that uh, the reason that there is a big Bangladeshi community there is, and originally also a Chinese community and a Jewish community, is because of the docks and because sailors were coming in and out of the docks,
Mm-hmm.
and they were working on the British merchant navy ships. So they were working as part of the British Empire and on these ships, and they were coming into London, and they were getting off the ship, and they were making their homes in London. So the connection between India uh, and Bengal and London there was really strong for me. And I had not known that until I was doing the research for this project. And then I went on maternity leave and I had my son, he was only about 2 months old, he was sitting on my lap. And I was like looking at him and I was thinking, well, actually, I didn't know that history. You don't know, we will not know that history either because there are no children's books that tell those connections. And so that's where the creative process began. The book is set in 1855 because I really wanted it to revolve around 1857 and the uprising and the disbanding of the East India Company. So it is part of a series, and the first book. So it is going to be leading up to 1857, and it is going to be a fictionalization of that. But the company, as it's called in, is only known as the company in the book, but it is very much directly connected to the East India Company. So the uprisings had various kinds of ways of being described in history. Until very recently, people were calling it mutiny, as if we were, as if our ancestors were, criminals who were, and that was a language even in
Mm-hmm.
history books. So to be revising that, to be retelling that story is really important to me, particularly across UK and India. So to child readers, to get them to understand that actually, no, it was resistance, it was rising up, and so that is really important as a kind of framework and the backdrop of City of Stone and Magic. There are all kinds of ways that I weave history, and so I, at the beginning of the story, a woman comes to Ummi for help because her husband has been forced to grow indigo, and their crops are failing as a result. So it means that I'm able to go into schools and talk to young people about the whole Bengal famines, about
Mm-hmm.
indigo, and this whole history um, of famine and starvation that was caused by colonialism, but which is never talked about. And so that is kind of the very beginning of the story. There are other elements. There is the fact that The villain of the story, who's called Devanes, that is an
Yeah.
actual name of a director of the East India Company. He's called Clive Devanes, so he's our
Mhm.
very famous villain. Robert Clive is why he has that first name, and Devanes was another director of the East India Company. So it's really just, I see history as kind of breadcrumbs. So
Mhm.
I, as a historian, when I'm doing research, I follow a breadcrumb trail. I might find one thing, and then enables me to jump to another archive or another thing, and slowly the story comes into being. And I want children to be, and my readers to also feel like history is a trail of breadcrumbs they can follow. One of my main characters is called Tipu, so
Yeah.
that people can go and find out about the incredible history of Tipu Sultan and what he did to rise up against the British. So it's all there for everyone to find for themselves, really, as well.
Right. That's so interesting that the work you were doing directly sort of set the foundation for this creative project, right? And you were able to connect two of your passions, one for storytelling, and I've read in your interviews too how you advocate for people to be actively involved in learning more about their history. So that's really interesting. uh, the magic system in the book that I was so excited about. And I observed that it reflects the very nature of some of the characters. So, with the writing magic, you have an approach that is thoughtful, that's intentional, and it reflects the way Farhana and Amina are as person, like as individuals, right? Their personality, their characteristics. Then you have something that's jinn magic, which is more of action. It's more forceful, and sometimes it can go haywire.
Yeah.
Uh, so, with regards to this, was that something that was intentional? Because with jinn magic, is people like Mohsin and Chompa herself who have this restless energy they would find appealing. So, this sort of parallel, was that something intentional? Could you talk a little bit more about your thought on creating this magic system?
That's so interesting, Mira. I'm not sure. I don't know if I was intending. I mean, I think that just came out of the creative process. Actually, it was really interesting to hear it being discussed that way, and that's why I love like talking to readers and hearing what readers think about the book, because they bring new things to it that even I didn't even think about really. I suppose I wanted a big contrast between the two
Hmm.
types of magic, and I also, think that children and young readers also need to think about the fact that, that writing can be laborious, can be difficult, but that it is also a way of mindfulness. It's a kind of practice
Hmm.
of kind of self-expression, and that sometimes things that take longer and require us to work harder don't necessarily, we might not necessarily see the result straight away, but there is value in that. So I wanted to seed that into one of the forms of magic. And I suppose the other type of magic had to be a contrast to that. And I did have this character Chompa who was really kind of, she just jumped into my mind really. She was fully
Oh,
formed when I was just sitting there on the sofa thinking about the story with my son. She just jumped up and went, actually, it's my story. I want to tell you the story. You have to write my story. So she was always like that, and she needed a kind of magic that did kind of, I suppose, was almost too easy to use. So there's one magic that's too easy and one
yeah.
magic that's too difficult, and that tension between them is something I really wanted to explore. So yeah, so I think that fact that the character sort of became kind of reflective of that is really interesting, and something I hadn't really designed or planned, but I'm delighted with that.
Yeah, because it was also interesting for me to note how they almost, like you mentioned, two magic systems that are like different from each other. There's a contrast, but for me it was also a way of looking at things that people have two sides to themselves, right? Like you have a part that wants to be mindful, like you're talking about, this one that wants to be a go-getter.
Yeah.
So without spoiling anything for anybody, it was fun to see how Champa deals with both of these magic systems and how they sort of come together for a lot of people in the
Mm.
book itself. So that was fun. That was really
Yeah, thank
fun.
you. I think what was really important for me as well was the fact that there should be a type of magic that anyone can do.
Hmm.
I think it's one of the things that I really struggle with fantasies like Harry Potter is just the
Mm.
unfairness of some people being born with magic and some people
Right.
not having any magic. And and that to me ends up with a kind of magical world that will never be equal, that will never be fair. So
Hmm.
I wanted, because my story is all about justice, it's all about freedom and equality at the end, at the heart of it. I felt like I couldn't just have one type of magic that only
Yeah.
some people could have. So for me, it was really important that even if it was difficult, even if it means doing some hard work, there was a kind of magic out there that anybody could use, and that magic then becomes a metaphor for freedom,
Hmm.
for literacy, for everything that enables us to lift ourselves up and lift others up as well.
That is a beautiful thought. Speaking of Chompa herself, your book is, there's a lot of intermingling of cultures, religions, and languages, right? Uh, Chompa goes from a young girl who refuses to learn Farsi and English, and she's wondering why can't we just use Bangla. Then there's Sal, who speaks some of Hindustani, and you also have characters like Salsworth, who is very firm about his views on God, and he views magic as something that's the work of the devil, right? Um, what role do you think texts like these, there's books and movies included, play in creating a society that's more about open mindedness, that's about respecting cultural differences?
I think there's a huge role. So my own family is quite unique in some ways, but it's actually, there are many more families like ours, I think, than we necessarily think. So my husband is Gujarati, I'm Bangladeshi. We are both born in Britain, and our families. My family is Muslim, his family is Hindu. So our children have like this multilingual, multi-religious, multicultural kind of heritage, and but when I was kind of and I wanted to celebrate that because that to me is
Yeah.
the heart of South Asia, is the heart of India. That is the incredible kind of richness of our culture, and particularly the way of in our family languages mingle, and and Hindustani, which used to be spoken on the ships as well, was this kind of multiple kind of like hybrid language of some Urdu, some Farsi, some Hindi. That's how it's evolved as a language that we speak now. So all this heritage. I mean, even my name and my children's names, they're Persian, they're Farsi names. And why do we have that? That was something I wanted to think about, because Farsi used to be a language that was the administrative language of Bengal, and that all those kinds of influences are there in our history and in our culture, even now in our language. And I wanted to really celebrate that, because we're living in a time where sometimes oneness is
Mm-hmm.
singularity is seen as the desirable thing, and that there is this kind of desire to kind of separate and feel that hybridity or multiplicity is messy or confusing,
Yeah.
and we want everything to be separate now, and actually that's not how it's been throughout
Mm-hmm.
history. It's always been this kind of intermingling, and so I want, I guess, through the story to just see that that is actually the norm. That is
Mm-hmm.
that is the world around us. That is how language works. That is how culture works. Constantly porous and
Yeah.
changing in the action of it. So I just wanted to set up a world which was like ours, but kind of where that
Hmm.
was the prevailing kind of norm. So um, and I've been influenced by things like Amitav Ghosh's Sea of Poppies trilogy, where he really celebrates the kind of multiplicity of Hindi and Hindustani in that, and I really wanted to kind of have my own version of it in my story, and it's just very alive.
Mm-hmm.
culture, when we think of it in that way, it's dynamic, it's always changing, and that is an incredible thing to want to celebrate. And
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it was really just wanting to celebrate that, and enable others to absorb and immerse themselves in that I really was wanting to do.
And I must say that you succeeded in that because I connected with that aspect so much. So I'm from Kerala, but I'm born and brought up in Ahmedabad. I've also lived in different cities throughout my life. So the idea of who I am, the cultures that are important to me, and where do I fit in when I'm in a particular place that I'm living in. These are things that I've always been conscious of and reflecting on by myself. So now at this point in life, embracing all these different parts of me, these different identities, comes very naturally to me, and it's like almost second nature.
Mm,
So seeing that conversation happening, seeing those themes highlighted, how Chompa is talking about language, the importance of it itself, the reaction that Tipu has when he reaches London and he hears someone speaking in Hindustani for the first time, that
mm,
joy, that surprise, he feels like he belongs, he's gotten that
yeah,
thread of commonality to connect with someone. So all of that I connected with so much, and it was so relatable. And I feel
wonderful.
like you mentioned, today a lot more people, they grow up in multicultural families, they're exposed to different cultures and languages at a young age. And like with the internet itself, right, there is like the boundaries between cultures has sort of reduced. So I feel like a lot more people will be able to relate to that aspect of the book as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
uh, to move on to the last discussion point, uh, before we conclude this segment of the session today, I wanted to talk about Champa herself. So Champa's character arc, it's a interesting and it's filled with ups and downs, right? She at a point in the beginning is stubborn in her ways. She throws caution to the wind, and then through her experiences she begins to first doubt herself whether she's capable of doing what is required, but then ultimately realizes that she's the leader that people need. So what is the biggest takeaway that you hope people take from this Chompa's storyline itself?
Oh, that's a really huge question, but it's really important. I think from her arc, I think she spent a lot of time thinking that she knows best at the beginning, and the
Mm-hmm.
she does take action, she does drive things forward, but she also really struggles because she's lived on her own with her mummy in a village in Bengal, and she's always been on her own, and she really struggles to know how to work with other people, and she struggles to listen, she struggles to kind of work as part of a team. And I think that by the end of the story, without giving much away, she actually understands the value of kind of listening, of taking a moment sometimes as well, or but also kind of believing in yourself, and what is right, and fighting for what is right. So I think that what's really important in taking away is that understanding who you are, and working with others, and realizing that maybe not you can't solve a problem on your own, but you might, if you accept help, and you
Hmm.
allow yourself to be vulnerable, then you can actually achieve something even greater than you thought possible. So I think that's probably the bigger takeaway from it. Yeah.
That's
But
great.
it's there for, I mean, I think it's there for all the readers to take what they want from it, because
True.
she's one story with one character with one arc. Tipu has got a really interesting arc as
Yeah.
well, in terms of being someone who's quite meek and mild, and timid at the beginning, and but seeing that actually there's a value in quietness too. So
Mm-hmm.
and understanding you can be a leader and be quiet.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is entirely possible. So yeah, there is lots there for everyone to take away, depending on who you are and what you want, and that's the beauty of stories,
True.
really.
True. And that's the best part about having communities like this, right? you create something, you put it out there into the world, and through reviews and through discussions like this, you understand that your work goes on to mean so much more to the readers themselves. So that brings us to the end of the discussion segment. Now I have planned a short but super fun game segment. It's basically this or that. So I'll be reading out 5 statements, and on the count of three, both of us pick the option that we want. Does that sound good?
Good. Yeah, sounds
Okay,
really fun.
so let's get started with that. The first one is, be the main character in a book or the one who comes to everyone's rescue at the end. Three, two, one. Come to the
Okay.
rescue.
Rescue. Yeah.
Same.
Rescue.
uh, the second one is, live only on sea, only on sea, as the ship goes on a voyage around the world, or live only on land but never be able to go on a cruise. Three, two, one. Live
Live on
only on land.
sea.
Really?
Oh.
I thought that too. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun, because the part of the book which is set in the sea, it was so exciting for me to read. I felt like I finished the whole thing in less than a sitting. So I thought that too. But then the idea of never being able to visit bookstores whenever I wanted, that was a little painful. So I was like, no.
Oh my god. I hadn't even thought about that. I might just have to take lots and lots of books with me before I leave.
True. That works too. The third one, writing charms or gin magic. Three,
Writing charm.
two,
Oh, sorry.
one. No
Two.
worries. Writing
Okay.
charms too for me.
Ah.
uh, have Amina as a mother or have Sal as a mother. Three, two, one. Amina.
Amina. Oh.
True. Something just so, her entire nature it gives off, even though Sal is a bit about tough love and things like that. But I feel like, yeah, Amina as a mother figure, she's just so supportive and understanding.
She's very gentle. I think
Right,
that's
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
The last one, turn anything into silver or be able to communicate with nature gens. Three, two, one, nature gens.
Nature gins.
Oh, we got a lot of the responses right.
Yeah.
The same.
Yeah. I mean, I love silver. That's one of the
Right.
reasons why I have written the story that I
Oh,
have this book, because I will always have my silver bangles on. But yeah, definitely talking to nature.
I like silver more than gold too. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's just something about nature gens and the paths that Lori and Tipu have. So yeah,
yeah.
that was exciting to me.
Connecting to another world. It's too,
Right.
yeah, so exciting. Yeah, thank you.
Um,
It was fun.
that's the end of this game segment. Now, before we conclude, let's just look at what people are saying. Oh, there's hi Abhi, hi Anthony, hi everyone. Okay, there's just one question here. Yeah, Abhi says, were there any specific magical scenes or world building elements that you found particularly enjoyable to write?
Oh, that's a lovely question. And yes, there is a particular darling, as a lot of writers call them in the book, that I really loved writing. And it's a moment where Chompa discovers that she's gone to a printing press, and it's an important part of the story for her to learn more about her mum and her past before she became her mother. And she used to print and write magical books to help others learn magic. And some protesters have kind of ripped everything up in the book, in the printing press, and all the pamphlets and books and everything, they've been torn to shreds. And Chompa needs to kind of, she's devastated because she was going to find out so much more about her mom there, and now everything seems hopeless. What she does in the end is she uses her magic to piece back the pieces of paper, because the paper was alive at one point. It was paper. It was part of trees. She's able to work with that in terms of energy, and she brings the kind of pieces of paper together in the air around her. So there are these clouds of paper, shreds, and they come together again, and they piece themselves together again. And I really loved writing that. There's lots of imagery in that section, which was really nice to kind of develop and explore, and it is one of my favorite sections.
I love that scene too. I also love the scene. Uh, in fact, this was the moment that I laughed out loud in the book, where Chompa has been invited to this party by Devane's, and they bring out the lamb chops, and she's
Yeah,
looking around, wondering if something's wrong. That scene, I was laughing out loud so much because to me, it was like take a girl out of India, but you can never take the Indian identity out of her. In like,
absolutely.
she's like looking at chilies around, like there's no salt in the food.
I know, and it was very much like I'm grown up in Britain, but my spice levels are extremely high. So, and I remember when I was studying at Oxford having to eat in college, and it being very similar to that experience. So I was bringing that all in, kind of the
Yeah.
disappointment when there's no seasoning, and my father used to always take his own chili powder everywhere, and I've become exactly the same. And when I was young, I was like, oh, that's so embarrassing. But now I've got my own chili and salt, little bag of it, because yeah. And so that was really fun to write, because I was kind of putting in all that rage and
Right.
disappointment I have when I go and eat food and it doesn't have enough spice. So I'm
That
glad you
came
enjoyed
through.
that.
Okay, so for the last one, Anthony asks, love those chapter illustrations. It gives a sneak peek into what's to come. But were you worried whether those illustrations will spoil too much for some people?
So my book is illustrated by an incredible Indian
Yeah.
illustrator called Sandhya Prabhat. She's doing really, really well. So I was really lucky to have her on board, and actually the chapter heads are little kind of like breadcrumbs that you kind of wonder about um, when you kind of going through, and they always relate to the chapter, which is
Yeah.
just kind of so beautiful. And then there are kind of these 5 also full page black and white
Mhm.
color illustrations for each part as well. And because you don't really know what's coming, or I think they're just a wonderful addition, and they almost increase your anticipation of like,
Yeah.
oh, something related to this is going to come along. So what is that about? Or so I think they work beautifully together, as well as the there are 2 maps as well by a
Hmm.
wonderful illustrator called Livy, and so I'm just really thrilled that there's been so much work and love put
Hmm.
in by the illustrators into the story, and I think it always just enhances uh, it all, and it makes it come to life. So yeah. um, but it, yeah.
I loved the Dhaka one. That's my favorite. It's beautifully done.
Yeah, I really wanted an illustration of a rickshaw in there, because the cycle rickshaws in Dhaka are one of my favorite things about the city, and it's very much part of the kind of experience of being in the old part of Dhaka,
Hmm.
and navigating the city through that
Yeah.
is a very different way. And so, yeah, I'm really thrilled that you got an illustration in there.
Yeah.
Rickshaws actually didn't get introduced in Dhaka until the kind of 1900s. So I had to push it back a bit. So there's a little bit of historical inaccuracy there, but
Still,
it's
yeah.
too wonderful not to have
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So that brings us to the end of this session. Before we let everyone go and conclude, what message or any concluding thought do you have that you want to share with everyone? Whether they've read the book, they've not read the book, what should they look forward to?
Oh, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I mean, it's really, really important to me. I came to India. I went to Ahmedabad. To do research for this book. So,
Mhm.
the relationship between India and the Indian readers for me is really important with this story. It's not, um, and so I'm really, really excited about you all kind of being really interested in it. And I hope you can get your hands on a copy. And I just think children's writing is having a really interesting period in India as well.
Yeah.
There's some really wonderful books coming out, and they're not just for children though.
Right.
I read children's literature because
Same.
I think it's you never have a character staring out of a window for 3 pages in the children's book. Everything is there, but everything is lean and just so I think don't be ashamed of reading children's writing and children's literature. Embrace it because it's the best. So that's my controversial final kind of thought. But it's just wonderful to be able to connect with you all, and I really hope that later in the year I can come over and I get to meet some of you in person.
That would be fantastic. Thank you so much, Nazneen, for being here. And it was great speaking with you. I'm sure everyone who's watching and who will watch the video later will also take a lot from this video itself. And that, they feel like they've had a fulfilling journey just reading along with everyone and also getting to discuss the book with you. So that's perfect. Everyone, if you've not read the book yet, get your copy of City of Stolen Magic. The link is in the description below. This is a perfectly layered story, never a dull moment. There's so much to look forward to it. I enjoyed it, and I'm pretty sure you will too. So thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you so much, Nazneen. With that, I will see you all again with another video. And Nazneen, hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you
Bye.
so much, Mira. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.